Hello everyone, and today we're going to be talking about a pretty spicy idea I've been working around with for the last couple of days. I don't think this deck list is quite finished yet, but it is a whole lot of fun, so it is. And I want to share the basic sort of proof of concept with you guys. I want to show you the basic sort of combos and the thought process so that, number one, if you're a lover of Thunder Dragons or Branded, it's going to be an interesting new avenue for you to investigate and play in your own time, as well as that if there's anyone out there who has any suggestions or tips or hints on how to make it better, you can, feel free to either throw them in the comments or throw them into the Discord. But basically, we're building an entire sort of Branded Thunder Dragon deck, but we're building it around Dimension Shifter. And by that I mean, we're not just throwing Dimension Shifter into a deck, it is the center of the deck. Dimension Shifter is the card you want to see. And why exactly is that? Well, Dimension Shifter is a really powerful floodgate, right? First of all, it's a pretty busted floodgate. So that's number one, of course. Number two is it actually incorporates, it actually helps you more consistently proc the effects of things like your Thunder Dragon Dark and Roar from your deck whenever you're utilizing things like Branded Fusion. My big issue with regular Branded Thunder Dragons is that there's no real baked-in way for your branded cards to trigger off all of your Thunder Dragons before you actually get the opportunity to search for them, which meant that sometimes the Thunder Dragons didn't really pan out as consistently as I would have liked. Dimension Shifter fixes that. How exactly does that work? So basically what you're looking to have is let's say Dimension Shifter and Branded Fusion in hand, right? So Dimension Shifter, we're running 3. We're also running 3 copies of Small World with the deck set up specifically to search for this card. So we're essentially running 6 copies of Shifter, which isn't the most in the world. You're not going to see it every single game, but you're going to see it more than consistently enough. And you're also going to want to see Branded Fusion. Of course, we've got 3 here, 2 here, 2 here. And we're also running 3 Keeper, which was sort of optional. I'm just looking for a way to more consistently grab Branded Fusion. It's been fine, but you might want to tag that out. So in this particular version of the deck, we're running 10 copies, well, let's say 11 copies of the Branded Fusion, because your Gold Shark can banish Tragedy from deck, Tragedy searches Aliber. So 11 copies of Branded Fusion, if you will. So you want to see Shifter or Branded Fusion. I'm going to quickly talk about the combo, and then we're going to get into some gameplay. So you want to activate Shifter, right? So once you activate Shifter, for the next 2 turns, anything that would be sent to the graveyard is instead banished. So then you want to activate your Branded Fusion. Branded Fusion sends Albaz and Thunder Dragon Dark from your deck to your banished pile in order to fusion summon out Lubellion. That's going to trigger your Thunder Dragon Dark's effect. Thunder Dragon Dark is going to search your deck for Thunder Dragon Hawk. If you already have Hawk, you're going to grab Fusion, but usually you're going to grab Hawk, right? Then your Lubellion's going to discard a card, discard whatever, and it's going to shuffle back Albaz and itself to bring out Predaplant Dragostapelia. You do not summon Mirror Jade under Shifter. Mirror Jade cannot use its effect so long as Shifter is active, because you need to send a monster from extra deck to graveyard. Because you can't do that, you can't activate Mirror Jade's effect. So you use Lubellion, you fusion summon into Dragostapelia or whatever other monster you want, but this is definitely, I think, the best one. And then you can use the effect of the Hawk that you search your deck for to grab the Thunder Dragon Dark that is currently banished, summon it out to the field, tribute the Dark, summon out Colossus. So you're going to be basically ending, if you're going first, you're going to be ending on Dragostapelia plus Colossus, and Shifter is going to still be in play for the duration of your opponent's turn. That means Runic is getting all their spells banished. That means Mathmech can't activate Circular because they can't send something from deck to grave. They can't search off of Alimbertian. They can't search off of their Circular. They can't send their cards to graveyard to revive them off of Diameter, so Mathmech get destroyed. Sword Souls really do get very severely hurt by this as well, because their Grandmaster can't search their deck. They can't like Taya banish from grave, their Mo Yi and their Long Wan and things like that can't activate their effects in grave. The Tenyi monsters can't activate their effects in grave because they're all banished instead, right? Which means they can't chain block the Grandmaster, meaning the Grandmaster is actually open to being ashed at that point. So it does play really heavily against Sword Soul as well. It completely crushes any massive graveyard based strategies like Adamantipator's, things like that. So really, really solid. Shifter by itself is a massive deal for a lot of decks to deal with. So when you're combining Shifter with a Colossus, locking them out of searching their deck for cards, and the Dragostapelia, which is an additional monster negate, all off of 2 cards, you still have 3 other cards in your hand. Well, 2 other cards because Lubellion discards 1. But you know my point, right? You're going to have other cards in your hand still to play past these already being on the field. So this deck is a whole lot of fun. I'm still working on it. There are still certain things that the deck needs to improve on. It doesn't push for game very well, for example, which is something that I think it's going to need to be able to do to take advantage of this massive stun it generates. So I'm still working on the deck, of course, but it is a fantastic idea, super fun. So if you guys are interested in it, take it away, you guys play it yourself. If you have any suggestions or improvements, feel free to throw them at me either in the comments or in the Discord. I'm going to stop rambling here for the intro of the video, so if you're interested in seeing decks like this, anything else that we've posted, then again, feel free to subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything, and it does help me out. You get to see more videos, I get to see more following, everyone wins. Let's get into game number 1. Alright, getting into game number 1 here. So here we have the branded opening Dimension Shifter package here. We're going to open up with Shifter. One of the bad parts of Shifter is, of course, things like your opening and your Thunder monsters aren't going to wind up in your graveyard for that additional protection, but you know what, for the most part it is worth passing up. We're going to branded fusion here into Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, which is going to trigger off our Thunder Dragon Dark as well as our Lubellion. I believe on this occasion we might have gone into Mirror's yet, I'm not sure. Again, this was a bit of a learning curve for myself. No, there's the Dragostapelia, very good. And then Thunder Dragon Dark is going to grab us a Hawk. Hawk then of course can discard itself to summon back the Thunder Dragon Dark. Tribute Dark goes into Colossus. Now our opponent is under Colossus, they're under Shifter, and we got a Dragostapelia, which is really solid. We didn't set Branded in Red because, again, we're not going to have any targets. Anything that would be sent to the grave is banished. Branded in Red is really not that good in this deck. I did try cutting it. I think maybe Branded Retribution would be a better card here. To be perfectly honest, I think it would be. But again, that's still sort of something that we're working on and building as we go along. Unfortunately, in this case, our opponent does have the out. They have the evenly matched, I can't remember, and then they're also playing Flute, right? So Dimension Shifter doesn't actually affect them in any meaningful way, which is of course very, very unfortunate. The Colossus does stop the Rubina though, because they can't add a card from deck to hand, so we do get at least something out of it. We top deck into Veeler, which is nice. Veeler's definitely a very nice card, but with that field spell up, it's going to provide them simply more than enough opportunity to get past us. So again, not a lot going on here, and this is what I mean. So because you're not setting up a graveyard on your first turn, you sort of need to rely on the stun in order to go in for lethal. So whenever you can't secure a kill, sometimes you're going to afford your opponent the opportunity to come back from the grave here. They're going to go Stree. We're going to negate the Stree off of the Veeler. Again, because they've got the Toucan, it's not necessarily going to be the biggest of deals for us, unfortunately. Toucan's going to add itself back to the hand, and they do get an additional normal summon off of their field spell. They're going to summon out the Toucan. Toucan's going to shuffle back Rubina, or at least add it back to hand, sorry. And then they're going to get to do an additional normal summon. They had the M-Pen in the hand already, unfortunately, so they are able to swing in and take care of our Colossus. If they did not have the M-Pen in hand, the Colossus would have continued to lock down our opponent, as they would not have been able to search for it. So we're simply going to have to draw here. We draw into Ghost Spell. I'm pretty sure at this point we realize that this matchup's going nowhere, and I think we scoop it up. Yeah, there we go. Yes, it's an L. I totally get that, but it displayed the combo that we wanted to be doing, and it displayed sort of how it works. I wanted to show that off. We're going to have, some of these replays are going to have slightly different builds than the one you saw at the beginning. We ended up sort of changing it and optimizing it to the one you saw, and we are going to go through card for card at the end. But yeah, let's get into game number 2. Already getting into game 2 here, we do have the Shifter in hand, which is brutal. Shifter is just amazing. So this is an example of a hand that you don't draw into your branded cards, right? And we were playing Aloof Lupin here. Aloof Lupin's really not necessary. We would have accomplished virtually the same board without using the Lupin here if we just used Gold Sark instead. So the Lupin is not necessary for this sort of player combo. We did summon out Matrix. Again, the Matrix is irrelevant. It ended up not doing anything for us. The Colossus then coming out of the field. The Matrix does make your Titan a little bit better, but it's not worth the inconsistency. We're going to shuffle 3 back into the deck, bringing out our Titan here that we're going to link into our Masquerena, and we're simply going to pass it back to... Oh, sorry, we're going to go Gold Sark to send Tragedy, I believe. Yep, we're going to mill out the Tragedy so we can search our deck for Aliber for our following turn, so at least we got some follow-up. and then we're going to pass. Now, whatever deck our opponent is playing, they're now under Colossus and under Shifter, and we should have a quick play pop whenever we need one. They're going to go for Freezing Curses. They're going to negate our Colossus. They're going to try activating Fountain. We're going to go Matrix to try and pop it off of our Titan, but they do have the Runic Dispelling to chain block our Titan. But the big thing about the Runic matchup is you need to remember none of their spell cards are going to the graveyard, which means that's 2 of their Runic spells banished. They're getting no card advantage off of their Runic Fountain. They got 2 cards left in hand. There's not really very much they can do because all of their spells are being banished. Our Colossus is now live again. They're not going to be able to search their deck for any more cards. We get a tick on Gold Sark, but it's just simply too much for the Runic player to handle. So long as Shifter was in play, neutering their sort of early game is one of the best things that this deck can do against the likes of Runic, right? Shifter really does cause a lot of headaches for this deck, and it's honestly one of the best counters we have to Runic available in Thunder Dragons, which is just another little thing I wanted to highlight. Let's get into game number 3. Already getting into game 3 here. A bit of an interesting hand, not an awful lot going on. We're going to Keeper of Dragon Magic, ditch our Dark. We are going to get hit with a Max C. I do believe we ashed this here because we are planning on going into our branded fusion plays. So yeah, we're going to ash the Max C. That gives us at least a little bit of breathing room. Our opponent's got 4 cards in hand. We do have the branded fusion now, which we will activate, and it will resolve, granting us Albion the Branded Dragon. So this is something I wanted to highlight as well. If you're able to put the likes of your Thunder Dragons in grave or hand beforehand, utilizing Albion the Branded Dragon and some of your other fusion tools, you can actually banish them through other methods. So you're not totally reliant upon the Shifter. So Albion's going to banish from grave the Dark and the Albaz to bring out our Lubellion. That means Dark is going to search our deck for a Hawk. Our Lubellion unfortunately does have to pitch the Effective Healer. I would have rather kept that in hand, but it is what it is. We're going to shuffle 2 back to bring out our Mirror Jade. Thunder Dragon Dark grabbing us Hawk as well. Hawk then going to discard itself to summon back the Dark that is currently banished, and then Dark is going to tribute off into Colossus. Now the difference between this board is, yes, our opponent is not under Shifter, but we do have several layers of protection for our Thunder Dragon Colossus. So we're not totally out of it yet. Well, at least we would do if we didn't just get Kaiju'd. Cringe, not gonna lie. We're gonna go into the Link Disciple here. Link Disciple then triggering off the Parallel Exceed in hand. What are you gonna do about a Mirror Jade, my friend? And banished. Done. Finito. Nada. And again, there's not really anything that this guy could have done about that, realistically, is there? Very quick matchup against Runic. Mathmech. You have a very positive matchup against Mathmech. That wasn't the best showing of it, right? Because we didn't have Shifter. Shifter completely shuts this deck down, and Colossus gives it a lot of problems. Now, our opponent had the Kaiju. I've never seen these guys play Kaijus, but he did. But yeah, no, Mirror Jade being able to target and banish one of your opponent's cards. If you want to, usually what you'll do is, if you don't have any other plays, you'll let them special summon out their Circular, and then you'll simply use Mirror Jade to banish the Circular, which means no additional searches. They're going to need an extra extender. They're going to need a whole bunch of stuff. So typically, being able to banish the Circular is great for that matchup. Shifter completely wins you the match instantly. They cannot beat you if you play Shifter. And yeah, generally speaking, pretty good. Let's get into game number 4. Alrighty, getting into our 4th and final game here. Now, this game is going to be a demonstration of what I meant by how the deck sort of needs to be able to push for lethal, which it currently doesn't really do. We're going to go Dimension Shifter, Branded Fusion. We got the full combo here. We're going to send from deck to our banish pile to summon out Lubellion. That is, of course, going to trigger off our Thunder Dragon Dark as well as our Lubellion, ditching our Spur Shifter to summon out another fusion monster. So our Lubellion then is going to shuffle back for the Predaplant Dragostapelia, and then we're going to grab ourselves a Hawk from deck. Hawk then is going to be discarded to grab back the banished Thunder Dragon Dark, bringing it to field, sacrificing it for the Colossus. So we have the Dragostapelia, Colossus, and the Shifter in play, with a little Veeler in hand should we need it. I believe we're playing against Mathmech here, so you can see here they have to summon out their Nabla, tribute Nabla to summon out Sigma, but their Nabla is now banished. They're going to summon 2 out here, then we're going to go into Link Disciple, and again, all of their math mechs as we're playing are being banished. Their banish pile is filling up, nothing in their graveyard, which means Super Factorial is in fact useless. Even if they do manage to get into it somehow, they cannot special summon Circular using its effect, and even if they did, they couldn't search for a card because of Colossus. So they're going to go into Wicked here, then into Lingaribo, and they're forced to go in the battle phase. They take out our Aliber, but literally nobody cares, and they end their turn. We're going to put a counter on this Cyber's Wicked here, just because we can. Again, he wasn't able to use Wicked's effect because he had nothing engraved to banish, and this is where the problem with the deck comes up, right? Because now we don't really have the ability to push for lethal, which means that yes, we were able to massively cripple and stun our opponent going first, but because they're still in the game, they're not able to start their combos from scratch if they have the ability to do so. So this is one of the big major weaknesses of the deck. Like I said, here it comes, out comes Circular. Dotscaper of all things is being normal summon, but that's just fine because it allows them to go into Masquerina, as well as resummoning their Dotscaper, then linking off into Mekk-Knight, Crusadia, Avramax. Now, what are you going to do about Avramax? Generally speaking, cry. They're going to swing into Colossus, taking out our Colossus here, because we didn't have any protection in Grave, because remember, it's all vanished. The double-edged sword, sometimes we top deck in the Ghost Spell, which is of no use to us here, and we simply switch our Dragostapelia to defense, and we're going to hope for the best. We're going to go straight to battle here, taking out our Dragostapelia, of course, and then allowing us to go into main phase 2. Diameter on summon, attempting to revive the Circular, but we are going to stop that with the Ghost Spell. Ghost Spell then is going to get stopped by Call by the Grave, and I do believe we use a Veiler here to stop the Diameter, yes, because if we don't use the Veiler right now, well, whatever he summons off of his Diameter is going to be able to negate our negates anyway. So we might as well stop it while we can, and simply hope for the best. Ghost Spell does end up getting negated, but his Diameter still does not resolve. It's going to link off into Splash Mage here. Splash Mage going to grab a Cyberse monster from his graveyard. Out comes the Diameter, linking off yet again into Decode Talker Heat Soul of all things. I would have expected the Transcode, Decode Talker Heat Soul, paying 1,000, ending his turn, setting a card face down. So we're in a rough spot, and this is part of the reason as to why we cut Matrix. Matrix does nothing by itself. Paying 1,000 life points, drawing another card. He has the ability to draw another card now if he wanted to. Diameter then grabbing him back the Circular from the graveyard, linking off into Update Jammer, and from here, you've all played Math Mech before, you know where this is going. Straight into access code, pop our card, and then basically finish us off. So yep, there goes the Matrix. Matrix grab another Matrix, or it would. The BM Ash Blossom just because they can, and there is lethal. So, unfortunate match, right? And that's the thing. One of the big weaknesses of the deck is definitely that it struggles to push for lethal on the turn after which it stuns, right? Because the stun is amazing, the negates and the floodgates are amazing, right? They work fantastically, decently consistent, and very, very impactful. But it's the turn afterwards, you sort of need to be able to win the game. And that's where we're struggling. So we may need to change our approach. We'll sort of see what's possible, we'll see what we can do. We will continue to work on this deck as we go along, but for now, it is definitely a functioning prototype. Let's get into the deck list, and we'll talk about the version of it we ended up on. Alright, so as we've covered off, this is it's a pretty interesting idea behind the deck. I still think it needs a little bit of refinement, but we can get it there. We're going to have a look at the current list. I'm going to strip out all of the unnecessary cards first. We've got the triple Veiler, we've got the triple Ash Blossom, we've got double Ghost Bell, triple Keeper of Dragon Magic I'm going to put down as not core because it's really not that mandatory. It is pretty useful to search for Branded Fusion, but it's definitely not needed. Shifter is mandatory, it's the whole point of the deck. And then we've got the triple Infinite Impermanence, I think that's them all. It is. Okay, so 26 card actual core deck. Branded in red, you might also want to swap out. You wouldn't just be taking it out, though. You would probably be replacing it with Branded Retribution. I feel like this would be a little bit stronger in this current sort of deck. But again, do with that as you will. So basically, the whole point of the deck, right, is it's centered around Dimension Shifter. We already talked about the combo. Now we're going to talk about the cards that make it happen, right? So we've got the 3 copies of Dimensional Shifter. Activate as a quick effect until the end of the next turn. All cards that would be sent to the graveyard are banished. Then we have Small World, which will basically banish a monster in your hand. It will banish an appropriate bridging monster from your deck, and you will get to search your deck for your Dimension Shifter, or any other monster if you already have Dimension Shifter. Basically just searches out anything you want, which is pretty nuts. So we're going to talk about we'll talk about the branded cards first. So we've got Despia and Tragedy at 1. Whenever this card is sent to the graveyard by a card effect or banished, it then searches your deck for a Despia monster. So it'll normally search for, next on our list, Alibur the Jester of Despia, which when summoned will search your deck for a branded spell or trap card. It basically acts as an additional copy of Branded Fusion. Tragedy can also search for the likes of Ad Libitum of Despia, which when in the hand or grave or field is used as fusion material, you will then get to re-summon either one of your Despia monsters or one of your level 8 or higher fusion monsters. So it basically is a bit of a reborn for a lot of your cards. If you're not playing branded in red, you might want to cut the Ad Libitum. He's really not all that in this particular version. But, you know, it's up to you. I would probably cut him. I'm not too big on the idea of Ad Libitum in this particular deck. Then we have the Fallen of Albaz, purely here for his name. You need to have Fallen of Albaz in your deck. You can play him at 1 if you're a mad lad, but 2 is for consistency. And then we've got the 3 copies of Branded Fusion, which is, like I keep on saying, one of the best cards in the game. Fusion summon by sending monsters from your deck to the grave and summon out one of your Albaz fusions, which is nuts. We're going to be using this card to pitch our Thunder Dragon Dark and our Albaz to the grave to get fusion summoning into Lobelion, so we'll fuse again, as well as search our deck and set up our Colossus. Pretty nuts. We got Branded Opening. Discard a card to special summon out a Despia monster from your deck, i.e. the Alibur. Alibur then will get to search your deck for Branded Fusion, so it's basically just an extra 2 copies of Fusion. It also has an effect where if this card is in your graveyard, you can banish it to protect one of your fusion monsters, from destruction, which occasionally comes up. It's not that common in this variant of the deck because of Shifter, but it's still something to bear in mind. And lastly, we have Either. I'm going to put them both on the screen here just so you can run a comparison and pick whatever one. I wouldn't run both. I would pick one or the other. I think Retribution is going to be far and away better. Branded in red, you can target a Despia or Fallen of Albaz in your grave, add it back to your hand, and then conduct a fusion summon. It is a quick play spell which affords you a lot of opportunity. The only problem with it is that if you resolve your combo, you're not going to have any Despia or Fallen of Albaz in your graveyard, which means that a lot of the time it's going to be dead, which is not good. So what I would rather run is Branded Retribution. Whenever a spell, trap, or monster effect is activated, you can either return a face-up fusion monster you control or 2 fusion monsters in your graveyard that mention a Fallen of Albaz back to your deck to negate the activation of a card, and if you do, destroy that card. You can banish it from your graveyard to target a branded spell or trap and add it back to your hand. So in this sort of situation, whenever you're going into the likes of Mirror Jade can essentially search this card out by banishing one of your monsters or one of your opponents if you're going second. So having a searchable Omni Negate counter trap, really solid. Really good. Plus it also recycles back your Branded Fusion, which is nuts as well. So that's the branded cards. Now we're going to get into the Thunder Dragon cards. We're not running that many of them. As you saw in the gameplay, a lot of the Thunder Dragon cards by themselves are a little bit bricky, so we've cut it down to just the necessary ones in order to make it as efficient and effective as possible. So we're going to be playing Thunder Dragon Dark at 3. Whenever this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, or if it is banished, you will search your deck for any Thunder Dragon card. Thunder Dragon Hawk can discard itself to resurrect any of your Thunder Dragons that are in the graveyard or banished, and Thunder Dragon Roar, both of this guy's effects are useful. You can discard him to add a banished or a Thunder Dragon card that is either banished or in your graveyard back to your hand, or if it is banished or sent from field to grave, you can special summon out a Thunder Dragon monster from your deck in defense mode, but it returns to your hand during the end phase. So they all technically have 2 effects, but Roar is the only one whose both effects are actually useful. Generally speaking, what you're going to be doing is utilizing your Thunder Dragon Dark. Thunder Dragon Dark, whenever it's banished, ideally off of the Dimension Shifter Branded Fusion combo, but if not, you can also do it off of Sark, you can also do it off of Albion, or whatever your situation is. You can basically search your deck for the Thunder Dragon Hawk. Thunder Dragon Hawk will discard itself to resummon the Dark that was banished, and then you can tribute the Dark to summon out the Colossus. Now Roar is here just to make that combo a little bit more consistent, because if you banish the Roar, you can search for the Dark. Dark can then either be tributed off for Link material or Fusion material, or it can be banished by a Mirror Jade in order to trigger off its searching effect. So Roar is just an extra way of getting into Dark, essentially. Then we've got Gold Sark. I'm going to count this as a Thunder Dragon card, even though it also kind of works with Thespian Tragedy. Banish any monster in your deck, add it to your hand after 2 turns. You never fully resolve this effect. You're basically just banishing a card in order to trigger its effect. So you'll banish the Light of Dark to trigger its search effect. You'll banish Tragedy to trigger its search effect. You might banish Roar on occasion to summon a card from deck. But you're not really focusing too heavily on link plays in this particular version. So you'll probably just end up banishing the Thunder Dragon Dark. Then we've got Thunder Dragon Fusion. Shuffle back from your graveyard or banish pile, or even your field, I'm pretty sure, fusion materials listed on a Thunder Fusion monster and summon that monster out to the field. So you're going to shuffle back 3 of your banished Thunder Dragon monsters to bring forth your Titan. This is primarily here as, yes, Titan's a cool card and all, but it's primarily here as a method of recycling your Colossus, right? That's the main reason it's here, because you can fuse your Colossus. If this card ever gets dealt with, you can fuse your Colossus and 2 of your other Thunder Dragons back into your deck to bring out Titan, and now that means you can summon Colossus yet again, and the Thunder Dragon Fusion can also be continually looped off of your Thunder Dragon Roar's effects, because this card can also banish itself from the graveyard to add a Thunder monster from deck to hand, which means that basically you can banish it from grave the turn after you use it to add a Roar to hand. Roar activates, discard Roar, add Thunder Dragon Fusion back to hand, and boom, you're in a position where you can just utilize it again. Pretty nasty. So you can basically just loop your fusion monsters a little bit. It's nice to use, nice to see, helps you with the Colossus. And yeah, that is the main deck. The main deck itself, not very complicated. The most complicated part about it is going to be using Small World, but literally, like I said, any monster plus Small World gives you Shifter. That's the main thing you need to know. I know a lot of people are a wee bit confused by this card, but literally just any monster plus Small World will give you Shifter if you look at the original list. So I'll put all of the hand traps and everything back in at the end to help contextualize that. So getting into the extra deck then, we of course have our Dragostapelia, which is more important in this version of the deck than ever. You want to be summoning this card out as part of your Branded Fusion Dimension Shifter combo, because you cannot use the effect of Mirror Jade while Shifter is in play, meaning you probably still want to get some interruption out of your Lubellion Fusion. So Dragostapelia is, I would say, pretty necessary in this version of the deck, yeah. Then we got the 1-of Thunder Dragon Colossus. As long as this card is face up, your opponent cannot search their deck for cards. Really good counter to Runic, really good counter to Mathmech, really good counter in general to any deck that wants to search their deck for cards. There are certain ones that it's not too broken against. For example, it's not exactly the end of the world against Adamanticators. Sword Soul can play around it decently well. They will miss out on 1 or 2 of their searches, but if they have a decent enough hand, they can usually get around a Colossus decently enough. So it's not exactly the end all and be all, but when you're pairing it with something like a Shifter, and then with something like a Dragostapelia, suddenly it gets a lot more difficult to get rid of and play around. We got the Titaniclad as a 1-of sort of emergency fusion. If you need a big old monster and you need it to be unaffected by extra deck monsters, Titaniclad is your man. Usually coming out of 37 or 3800 attack points, it is basically here to be an unaffected beatstick on the occasions where such a thing is required. And it does come up, yeah. So I would say if you have it, play it. If you don't have it, don't break your neck over it. It's whatever. It's fine. But it is definitely a card that I do like playing. If you would rather bump your Albion up to 2, that is also a very valid point. Albion serves dual purpose in this deck, where not only 1 is going to be sent to the graveyard to trigger its secondary searching effect off of Mirror Jade, it's also actually going to be used for its primary effect in this whenever you open up with some of your Thunder Dragons in hand. So this card, basically, whenever it's fusion summoned, you get the option to fusion summon again, utilizing by banishing monsters, from your hand, field, and graveyard. So if you have one of your Thunder Dragons in hand and you don't have another way of banishing them, what you can do with Branded Fusion is, instead of going into Lubellion, you can instead summon out Albion the Branded Dragon, utilizing your Effect Veiler and your Fallen of Albaz. So that's why Effect Veiler is pretty important. So you'll fuse those two together, you'll summon out Albion. Albion will then banish one of the Thunder Dragons in your hand, either Dark or Roar, as well as the Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard to fusion summon out Lubellion, and that will trigger your Dark to search for your Hawk, and then you do your whole Colossus play. So Albion is definitely pretty important. And then, of course, Lubellion will shuffle back the Albion as well as the Fallen of Albaz to bring out Mirror Jade if there's no Shifter in play, or if there is Shifter in play, it'll bring out Dragostapelia. So definitely a lot of flexibility when it comes to Albion, but it is decently easy to recycle, so it's not vital that you play more than one of it, but you might want to. If you don't have Titaniclad, play 2 Albion. It works out. Don't even worry about it. Then we got Despian Quirites. This card was good while we were playing Branded in Red. It's really not that good if you're not playing Branded in Red, so I would definitely cut it. You can't really summon it in this list. We were only playing it because we had Branded in Red, so now that we're not playing that, we're playing Retribution instead. You probably want to cut the Quirites. Probably bump Albion up to 2 if you haven't already. Then we got the Mirror Jade. Mirror Jade is, for the most part, if you don't open up Shifter, going to be one of your main boss monsters. So you'll usually have like a Mirror Jade plus Colossus and potentially Retribution, which is still really ridiculously solid. So yeah, Mirror Jade's going to be your boss monster for most of the games where you don't have Shifter, but given how often you have Shifter, you'll find yourself going into Dragostapelia more often. Basically, you can send one of your Albaz fusion monsters to the graveyard to banish a card on the field without targeting. Very good removal for a lot of very pesky threats, like an IP Masquerena summoned Avramax. This is an out to it as well, so very good removal. And also during the end phase of any turn where it is sent to the graveyard, it will destroy all of the monsters your opponent controls, so long as it was your opponent's card that sent it there. You can only use its banishment effect once every 2 turns. So Mirror Jade's pretty solid. You will summon it off of the effect of your Lubellion 99% of the time, which we'll get into now. Lubellion, a fusion of the Fallen of Albaz and any dark monster, i.e. your Thunder Dragon Dark. And you will basically discard a card to shuffle back from your hand, graveyard and banish pile back into your deck the materials listed on a dark fusion monster. Does it have to be a dark fusion monster? A level 8 or lower fusion monster, which will normally be your Dragostapelia. It can also be your Mirror Jade. Basically, this guy not only shuffles back monsters for a big fusion play, it also puts your Dragon Dark into the graveyard if you haven't done so already. So if you have Shifter in play, Branded Fusion will trigger off Dark's effect. If you don't have Shifter in play, what you'll normally do is try banishing this guy from hand, and with the Branded Fusion, you would instead try to get Tragedy to the grave. But there's again, I can't describe every single play in the deck because it is quite sort of... Not only is it detailed, but it's also quite well documented, right? If you've had any experience playing Branded, it'll make sense to you. It will just make sense. If you haven't had any experience playing Branded, this is probably not the place to start. I'm gonna be real. Unless you already know Thunder Dragons really well. You have to know one of the two really well. If this is gonna be your first exposure to both Despia, Branded, and Thunder Dragons, oh, you're in for a learning curve, my friend. But still... So, Lubellion's basically an additional fusion. We've got Alba Lunatus, which... it's mainly here to search for Branded Fusion whenever you send it to the graveyard. It's also kind of useful against decks like Dragon Link. It doesn't come up very often, but if you're going up against a dragon-based strategy, you can just normal summon the Fallen of Albaz, don't even use its effect, and you just contact fuse the Fallen of Albaz plus all of their monsters into Alba Lunatus. So it's pretty solid. Again, very specific matchup oriented, but if you're in that matchup, you're gonna love seeing it. It's gonna work out for you. Chimera is another one of those cards. If we're cutting Branded in Red, we are cutting Chimera. We would probably play a second Thunder Dragon Titan just to make sure we can, instead of only getting one loop out of the Thunder Dragon Fusion, we could then get infinite loops out of the Thunder Dragon Fusion, because we can continually loop back not only Colossus, but our other Titan. While that's not strictly necessary, if you want to play another Link monster, you can. If you have another Fusion monster in mind, you can play that as well. But I think the double Titan isn't a terrible idea if you already have 2 of it. Basically, this guy, he's primarily here just for the resource loop, but he can also technically, whenever your opponent goes to... whenever you activate the effect of a Thunder monster in hand, you can pop a card in your opponent's field without targeting. So you can do it on your opponent's turn with Dark, but you'll primarily be doing it on your turn after activating something like Hawk or Roar or Dark in your hand, and just get popping. So it is occasionally useful. Both Titan and Colossus can protect themselves from effect destruction by banishing cards from your graveyard. Again, under Shifter, that isn't very easy to do, so most of the time they're not going to be able to utilize those effects unless the game goes on a wee bit longer. But it is worth bearing in mind, if you don't open up Shifter, then these guys can protect themselves by using your graveyard. And to finish it all off is our small little link package here. We've got IP Masquerena, Nightmare Unicorn, and Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess. No particular reason or anything behind these guys. They're just all very good generic link monsters. Sometimes you want to be able to go into Masquerena by pitching some monsters to Graveyard. It's primarily here that on the off chance you don't have a way to get Thunder Dragon Dark from field to grave, you can just link it off into something like Masquerena, which you'll not do very often. You will not utilize these cards very often at all, because most of the time you'll be locked into fusion summoning by your branded opening and your branded fusion, so it'll not be super often. But yeah, it's just an extra option. I like having these cards. They make me feel good. So yeah, pretty much as simple as that. So I appreciate that's an awful lot of information for some people to take in. If you haven't played branded and if you haven't played Thunder Dragons before, there is a bit of a learning curve to this. If you've played either or, if you have experience of one and not the other, trust me, you'll be able to pick this up like that. And if you've already played regular branded regular branded Thunder Dragons, then you're going to be way ahead of the game. The only thing you really need to do is adjust your strategy to factor in Shifter, right? The only thing you need to do is adjust it for Shifter, potentially shifting more into Dragostapelia than you have in the past, but you'll already have an idea of what to do. So yeah, that is the full deck list card for card. Again, if you like those types of in-depth breakdowns, or if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, or hop into the Discord and ask us there, why not? And if you have got this far into the video and you haven't subscribed yet for whatever reason, I would implore you to do so, because obviously you like what you're seeing and I like having you around, so it's a win-win. And with that, I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.